the trials and the tribulations that she had to go through in order to get here to America and to build a life for yourself, your sister, and your brother as well. And then your father, not just a drug dealer, he wasn't selling dime bags on the corner. You know what I'm saying? Like he was
Hmm.
that dude.
Yeah.
So from these two people, you're a product of these two people, and not everything that they did was great, but you're a product of these two people. What strengths in yourself did you take from each of those individuals?
From my mother, I am an eternal optimist because of my mother.
Live from the streets of Washington, D.C., on the corner where sports and culture meets hip-hop. Sharing stories of the DMV and spitting fire for the whole damn country. This is First and Told with Chad Ricardo and Darrell Bucknight.
And we're back. It is now time for our favorite part of the show. This is when we have an opportunity to sit down with a very special guest. And today, Darrell, we got a very special guest in the building. She is my dear friend. But
We
before
do.
I talk about her, you tell us who she is.
We have a very special guest, Chad. Thank you for setting the scene, setting the stage for us. And we are joined on this fresh and welcome back episode of the First and Told podcast by the wonderful Miss Felicia Heath. Felicia is a friend of our shows, a friend of Chad, and she is a triple board certified critical care anesthesiologist. She's a blogger. She's a wife, a mother of four, including a brand new, is it a 3-month-old that you have?
Yes.
You have
Just
you have
turned
a
3 months.
just turned 3 months. And aside from all the amazing things I just mentioned, Felicia is also the author. She's a debut author of a new book set to debut, I believe, tomorrow after the recording of this podcast. It is entitled Spirit of a Hummingbird, set to release September 13th. That book was written in a studio in the heart of Philadelphia, I believe, and it's a memoir, Memories from a Childhood on the Run. She wrote this book 72 hours after delivering her third child. This left her husband with their 2-year-old, 1-year-old, and newborn as she drank Pinot Noir and wrote for days on end. And this is according to her, not to me. All of it was his idea, which is exactly why she tattooed his name across her shoulder and eloped with him on a South African safari 6 years ago. So Felicia, we are so happy to have you. We are so happy to have you on our show, and we're gonna have fun, and we're gonna let our audience get to know you. So welcome.
Goodness.
Thank
I
you
mean,
so much.
listening to that biography there, Fee. I'm just thankful that you are still my friend after all of the things that you've done. All right. So, look, we're going to get to your book in just a moment here, but we like to lighten things up because we consider our show to be at the intersection of sports, all things entertainment, as well as hip hop and music. So, Fee, right now on the spot, I need you to give me your top 5 musical artists of all time.
Nicki Minaj, Lauryn
Okay.
Hill, Jay-Z, Eminem.
Of it.
Mm, the fifth one. I'm
Yeah.
I'm gonna say Ti.
Woo, really? I
Oh,
love it.
okay.
I love it. Yeah. See,
ATL.
Darrell doesn't know much about that kind of music. He wasn't born yet when we were jamming out to most of those guys. So you know.
I will say I did see Lauryn Hill in concert a few years ago, and she is
Mm.
also one of my top 5 favorite artists of all time. So Chad, take what he said and just
What time did she
shove it
arrive for
aside.
your show?
Oh,
There we
about
go.
5.5 hours late, but we still saw her.
Fee, look, I want to get back to the person that you are and how it is that all of this that you've become, where it all started. You talk about all of your accomplishments. I mean, you're triple board certified. I don't even know what that means, to be honest with you. Mother of four, author, soon to be best-selling author, etc. Where did this drive come from? Intrinsically, where did you get this?
Intrinsically, I have this urge to accomplish so much more than I can ever imagine. And having kids actually has magnified that urgency to be someone and have an influence on this world for them as well. Um, the drive also comes from after writing the book, I realized that there's actually not much that I cannot endure and I cannot overcome. And everything feels very possible after writing the book and recognizing my strength and what I've, conquered in life. So
Mm.
that is the inherent drive. I mean, a lot of it is also to make my mother proud and feel like I'm leaving something worth remembering at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah. Shout out Mama Lon, certainly one of my favorite people in the whole entire world. I want to take you back to your childhood now, and the great thing about it when we get all of this information is this stuff is also what your book is about. So as we're
Mm-hmm.
getting to know you, we're
Yeah.
also given a kind of a peek under the cover of your book, which is again coming out on tomorrow. Back when you were, let's say, a teenager, right? Because I interview a ton of student athletes, we interview a ton of student athletes, and the special ones, the five stars, the
Mm-hmm.
elites of the elites, I asked them at what point did they realize that they were different? So for someone like you who has gone on to accomplish all of these things, etc., there had to have been a point in which you were sitting in a classroom or you were sitting somewhere else where you said, you know what? I'm operating at a different level
Mm-hmm.
than most of my peers are. Where was that point?
I would say that point was probably around middle school. So I did go through a lot of bullying as a younger child, and I use school as therapy to create a sense of stability in my life. Um, and I realized that I didn't care what they thought or how they treated me or any of that. It didn't make me sad. it it was just a nuance that came with going to school and accomplishing what I needed to do to heal and find peace and deal with what I was going through at home, which was much bigger than anyone could ever realize. So I think that's when I understood that I was on a different wavelength because
I think that we use, the word bullying, like it's a hashtag and it goes around so frequently right now. But I think that it is used so much that we kind of gloss over it.
mm-hmm,
So when you say
yes.
bullying, talk to me about that. What was that?
So bullying for me, and I mentioned some of this in the book, was a lot of racist and sometimes personal verbal attacks, unprovoked, um, in school and other people in order to embarrass me or hurt me or um, make me feel ashamed of something that I shouldn't be. So, for an example, kids would come up to me and, make all these uh, really silly noises mimicking what they believed was Chinese language. That kind of bullying, or saying that I was ugly, or asking me why I wore the same clothes every day, or pointing out scars, like unprovoked meanness that, you know, only serve themselves for a laugh or um, an, an ignorant amount of attention from other kids.
So instead of fighting back physically, you turned to your education, you turned to the classroom,
Yeah.
and you derived your strength from there.
Yes. I mean, so my entire upbringing was extremely dysfunctional and chaotic, and school brought me a sense of stability. So I was able to study, and math brought me this sense of resolution. Like I can figure something out and come to the same conclusion every single time if I do it right. And then reading and writing and delving into that helped me escape and live other stories. And I needed that. I needed that as a child. So I feel like there were days that I said, oh, I'm a little scared to go to school today because of the bullying, or I didn't look forward to it. But there was a transition at some point where I said, none of that actually even matters because I've gone through so much. I need this. I need this to survive. And all of this bullying is nothing. And if they had even known what I was going through at home, they would realize that the bullying and the nonsense was nothing compared to what my real life was.
Wow. Wow.
I don't want to give away too much in the book because I obviously want our viewers and people who listen to this show to go out and buy it and read it and understand your story. But I just actually, as I was speaking just now, I made the mistake that I didn't want to make. I don't want to call it just a book. This is a memoir. This is a recollection of things that you experienced during childhood and a continuation of a lot, because part of this title is Spirit of a Hummingbird, but memories from a childhood on the run. So it's not just one set thing. It's like I said, a build up and a continuation of things. Some of those things that you experienced as a child and that you still had to go through when you left school and left all the bullying and left all the turmoil that you faced in the classroom or in the school building. What were some of those things that you did experience away from school, and why did you feel it was important to express those, not only just in your life, but in this memoir as well?
So some of the things that I experienced were domestic violence between my parents. I would say domestic violence between me and my extended family. Poverty. Just going through life with immigrant parents and being a first generation immigrant. So those were the things that I was going through outside of school and going home to. And it was important to talk about all of those things in order to relate to my reader. I wanted to give them the most authentic version of my life, and so that they could relate, so that they could somehow feel empowered themselves when they, step back and analyze what they go through on a day-to-day basis.
I do want to circle back to the memoir a little later, specifically about the title, Spirit of a Hummingbird, and how that came to fruition. But as a debut author, I do want to ask you about the process and how you decided that you wanted to write this book. I kind of mentioned it in the intro, but to hear more about why you decided to do this, but also how did you find the people to work with, the publishers, getting everything together in this process? If you wouldn't mind, take us through that and just let us into your mind and how.
So the inspiration for the book probably began a decade ago when I was a young adult and my self-perception started to evolve. Okay, I went from feeling like I don't want to tell people what I went through to I should be telling them what I went through because it's interesting, it's gritty, and it's a story worth sharing. And then when I decided to write the book, 100% after I interviewed my mom. I interviewed my mom hoping to gain some insight to what I was like as a child. And instead, I found so much strength in her struggles that I said I had to write our story, not just my story, our story. So that was what sparked the whole process. The process of writing included a lot of reading. So once I decided to write the book, I read incessantly. Audiobook, every memoir I could get my hands on. I did workshops. I wrote when I could. I dedicated a few hours a week to writing. I outlined. I made like a visual of what I wanted the book to be like. And then in my mind, I was really telling the story in my mind and just trying to figure out the best style to represent my story in the best way possible, to speak to my audience. Then when it came finally time to write it, I had to just sit in a studio in the heart of Philadelphia, like you said, and write it from beginning to end, because that was my opportunity. I had already had this idea in my mind. I just had to execute it. And I was lucky enough where, my husband and I both took family leave. So I sat there and I said, I cannot sacrifice this time with my family and leave this studio without a finished book. Okay, that is unacceptable. So that's what I did. And then when it came to the publishing and what route I would take, the most important thing to me was creative control. I wanted to approve of everything. This is my story, my book. I didn't want anyone else to own the rights. So that right off the bat eliminated traditional publishing companies, because they end up taking over all of the rights. And eventually, if I want to do something with the book on a bigger scale, I didn't want them to have the power to manipulate my story into anything else other than how I created it. So then after that, you have the option of either self-publishing or hybrid publishing. When you self-publish, you really have to understand the industry. I mean, I didn't really have time for that. My focus was writing the book and getting it out there, but I didn't have the resources to find someone to design my cover or the format or create it into a Kindle or set me up to do an audiobook. So with hybrid publishing, they take a smaller percent than a traditional publishing house, but they give you all of the creative control, and you both invest into the project. So they have some skin in the game as well. So your success will also, be important to them. And they also help with marketing. These days, the traditional route, there is no marketing involved. They essentially say if you have a social media following, you can do all of that on your own. So I didn't really see any benefit to going with them, even if it was for, the prestige of it, because they would have creative control. They wouldn't really market for me, and they didn't have anything to lose if the book didn't do well.
No, I love that. And again, if you're just now joining us, Spirit of a Hummingbird dropping tomorrow. That's on September the 13th. No matter when it is that you're checking this out, we've got Felicia Heath joining us here on First and Told. I'm Chad Ricardo. That's Darrell Balknight. Fee, look, the book, again, you're my best friend, and I love you pieces. And I would have read your book one way or the other, bro. Like it could have been horrible, and I would have read every page of your book based on our personal relationship. Mm-hmm. But that's not the case in this book. Like this is a page turner. Like I was engulfed. I was entranced by the book. And one of the things is it is to your parents and to the lives that you led, because like you said, this is not just your story. This is your family's story. Your mother, the trials and the tribulations that she had to go through in order to get here to America and to build a life for yourself, your sister, and your brother as well. And then your father, not just a drug dealer, he wasn't selling dime bags on the corner. You know what I'm saying? Like he was that dude.
Yeah.
So from these two people, you're a product of these two people, and not everything that they did was great, but you're a product of these two people. What strengths in yourself did you take from each of those individuals?
From my mother, I am an eternal optimist because of my mother. It's when people say your attitude and your enthusiasm takes you so much farther than,
Yeah.
you could really imagine given your circumstances, that's because of the outlook she gave me. She was still able to laugh about some stuff through it all and be entertained by her children. And we would have these moments that we said we would be okay. And honestly, the entire universe was telling us that it would not be okay. And she believed that something better was coming. So that optimism has helped me thrive. And then from my father, it's funny because, when you're young and immature and you're resentful, you tend to think, all of my positive qualities had nothing to do with you. None of my successes, I did all of this without you.
Right. Yeah.
But really, he gave me two things that I can actually point out. One was he was a fearless, egotistical man. And
I see none of that in you, Felicia. None.
And this is twofold. And he told me I was beautiful all the time. So he told me I was the future Miss Chinatown, and he had this own ego of himself. And
this is while other kids at school were telling you how ugly you were.
Exactly. So, and this is now me becoming an adult with high self-esteem. How did I become a woman with confidence and high self-esteem after going through all that? And I think partly it was because my dad instilled this unshakable idea that I was beautiful. And that's it. And you look like me, so that means you're beautiful. And it's a fact. And in this day and age where social media and image and all of these things make you feel inferior, like I don't feel any sense of that. And I do think it's because of my dad.
Yeah. When you look at, for myself as a 40-year-old man, when you get to be of a certain age, and Darrell's not there yet, but when you get to be of a certain age, you truly do begin to look back and to understand how all of these relationships, how all of these circumstances and instances, how they do and how they have made us the people that we are today. And sometimes we go back and we thank people that we hadn't thanked before we have those conversations. I'm interested to know what conversations or how did the relationship with your mother blossom as you took in the totality of everything that's found in the book?
It opened up conversation. So my mother didn't really share anything about herself to us. A part of that was for our own protection, I think. And she didn't want us to see what she went through or was going through, so that we could continue to have a positive outlook on life. So it did open up conversation that we would otherwise never have had. And the other thing that it helps me and us is appreciate the decisions that she made. So, on the surface, some of the decisions in the book and how she handled certain circumstances made you wonder, was this the best for you and your family? But when we talk about it, and I now understand what she went through, It was the only way to eventually get to the end of, this journey and survive and for us to be okay later on in life.
Yeah, I do want to circle back to something I briefly mentioned
Yeah.
earlier about the title of the book and Spirit of a Hummingbird, because it's so, to me at least, it's so thought provoking and it takes you to
Yeah.
so many different places. How did you come up with that title, and what does it mean to you? But also, what was your purpose in not only developing that title, Spirit of a Hummingbird, but getting it to resonate with
Yeah.
readers and with the audience,
Yeah.
and looking at the cover of the book?
So I didn't come up with the title of the book until after I wrote it. And I wanted something that provoked some sort of imagery, for my reader, some kind of artistic image for them. And that was one part of it. The other part was, there's a scene in the book where I am watching a hummingbird be painted, and there was something like very beautiful that gravitated me towards that bird. And then I later went on to research it, and it's a symbol of lightness and joy. And they represent, your capacity to combat negativity. And I feel like that was a recurrent theme in the memoir. I had to continually tap into my tenacity to handle this life on the run and not let it break my spirit. So that's how I ended up coming up with the title.
That's awesome. That's really, and when I first heard it and first thought about it, I immediately thought imagery, because you think of a bird, you think of a hummingbird, and so many thoughts and images come up in one's mind when they think of just animals in general, but especially birds, for many reasons you just explained. I do want to kind of end on this and ask you about the overall message of the book. You've talked about it a good amount throughout this interview, and what you experience and what you hope what you hope others get from this. But you touched on topics such as bullying, such as the experiences that you went through at home, in your personal life, in public with others that you didn't even know. And you just a few minutes ago touched on social media and how damaging and negative it can be, especially to today's youth. So all of that in a nutshell, what do you want your overall message from your memoir to be for those who read the book, or for those who may not read the book but just hear this interview? What do you want them to know?
I want my readers to feel inspired after reading it. I want them to recognize the power in their own story, because it exists and it's there, and allow anything difficult or challenging to uplift them rather than bring them down. You can take control of your thoughts and your perspective, and you should create your own happiness despite whatever you're going through. And I hope I can send that message, when the book is released.
Now, look, Felicia, Heath, we're going to get you out. You're very, very busy, and I promise you that we're going to let you get back to your life. But I got just a couple of more questions for you, just because they popped in my brain right now. Like, I read back through your memoir, and I'm going through your childhood again on the run, and later on, it's not even just you and your mother. Then your sister Amanda is born, and then your Brian is born as well. And you had a different responsibility then, right? Like you kind of had to grow up before that which a typical young child would grow up. You had to take care of them, okay? Then I looked at you in college, which is when it was that we met, and you were always, even then, you were a leader amongst your friends. It was you that the people that were in your circle that they looked to be led through the way. And now you are a doctor and in positions of leadership within a hospital. So I say all of this to say that you have been this individual who has always taken care of and healed and served others. In some ways, are you going back to take care of the little girl who was on the run that we find in your memoir?
In some ways, I believe that is true. I think for a long time, I protected that girl in the memoir
Yeah.
by not talking about any of this and not reliving it or delving into my memories or reflecting to protect that girl. It was a coping mechanism. By freeing her and allowing her to speak her truth, I think I'm healing her.
Yeah, yeah. And we'll get you out of here on this. As life has so presented itself, you are a mother of 4 children. 3 of those are girls. I know that you love your baby boy. I know that Maverick, that's your dude. You've got 3 girls yourself though as well. What do you teach them, and what things are the most important for you to arm your girls with as they come up in this world?
So all of us have a daily mantra, but it all began with my first daughter. So their mantra is, I'm strong, I'm fearless, I'm smart and beautiful, and nothing in this world can stop me. That is what they say every day on their way to daycare.
I love it.
Okay?
That's so great.
They have to believe that they are unstoppable and anything they want to do, they can do. Not because they only believe in themselves, but because their mom blazed the trail and is showing them as well.
That's what's up.
I don't want my kids to have one inkling of doubt at all. And that's what I'm hopefully doing by being a leader and making a difference in medicine and sharing my story and so on and so forth. More to come.
That's what's up. That is
awesome.
The book, the memoir, Spirit of a Hummingbird. It is in store. Where can we get it, Fee? How do we purchase this book?
You can get it on Amazon. The link will be live tomorrow. You can also get it on Barnes & Noble online. And you can, if you call into any of your local bookstore and ask for it, they can order it directly as well.
That's what's up. That is... Felicia
Amazing.
Heath, you have been absolutely fantastic, not just today, but every moment of the 20 years that I've known you. Thank you very much for stopping.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.